Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the Netflix series The Hunting Wives with the wonderful Brittany Snow. And one of the things that I love about how they came to you with conversations for this role is that you got all of the scripts at once, which is such a rarity, especially at that stage. And I loved you saying how you immediately felt like if this was something on Netflix that you weren't in, that you'd wish you had been in it, but also that there were some nerves that came along with the idea of playing this part. And I was interested in how the idea of the nerves actually helped to give you that gut instinct of this is something that I really need to do and challenge myself with.
Oh, definitely. I mean, anyone who has seen the show realizes what a brave choice this was for me, for anyone, I guess, who's on the show, in terms of it being just a really brazen, bold, and very, yeah, sexual show, but it's powerful in a lot of ways. We're making a lot of big, strong statements, and I think that I probably would have been mad at myself if I didn't put myself in the ring or try to do this in terms of I wouldn't want myself to hold myself back from an opportunity like this because I would be scared. And I think that the only reason I wouldn't want to do a show like this would be because I would be scared, specifically of people's judgments or people's opinions. And I'm so glad that I'm at a point of my life, um, emotionally, that I don't care as much and I wanted to do it anyway. And that's a huge marking in so much for me. And so I'm so proud to be a part of it, not only because the show is amazing, but also because I um I did it for myself.
I love that. And especially, I know when you first started talking to Rebecca Cutter, who's the creator of the show, and the rest of the producers, that they had a really clear sense of the tone of this show. And, it sounded like they shared with you, like, we want this to feel satirical and fun. And at the same time, we want to have this darkness in the characters and things that they're uncovering and for it to feel a little bit dangerous for them. How did that really help you figure out how to play Sophie and the world that you were stepping into, given that they had such a concrete concept of the tone?
I think from the very beginning when I met with Rebecca and Erwin, Rebecca Cutter and Erwin Stoff, who were the main producers, and Rebecca the showrunner and Erwin the producer. But the first thing they said to me was this show, more than anything, needs to be fun and it needs to be entertainment. We're not trying to make something that's going to reinvent a wheel of any sorts. We're doing this because this is a heightened world. But I took it as an opportunity and as a challenge to play the person in this heightened world that was not necessarily heightened. And I knew that that would sort of be a challenge in a way because I might seem like a character who's fish out of water and then also an actor who's a fish out of water in some ways. And I really liked the fact that I got to be the straight woman in a lot of ways, or straight actor in a lot of ways. Uh, um, because because I got to really be the audience's lens and viewpoint into a world of just chaos. And they had a really big handle on the tone of the show and wanting it first and foremost to be a wild ride.
I also think with what you just said about Sophie being the audience's lens into the show, she comes in as this fish out of a water in completely new spaces, but she does so in a way that's never judgmental. And she genuinely is someone who just has a lot of curiosity. And it feels like the curiosity kind of fuels and grows even more as the season progresses. Was that something that you found very early on in looking at the scripts of curiosity instead of judgment?
And I loved that about her. I loved that she came in with much more of a strong moral compass than she leaves with, which I think a lot of people are frustrated by, me included. But I think she's susceptible to change because she is so curious and because she comes from such a darkness and such a bad place in her life. I'm not sure if she would have come into this world and been so susceptible to these changes if she would have had more of a footing in who she was. And yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that she was not going to be a one-dimensional character that stuck her foot in the sand and stuck her head in the sand and was just one viewpoint the whole way. Because it kind of lends itself to the audience as well, where they're sort of discovering this world along with her and they're curious more than judgmental.
And it feels like when we first meet her in those first few episodes that she's kind of been put in a bit of a box by people around her, but also that she's done that a little bit to herself because it feels safe and controlled and like things won't go wrong like they have in her past. And what were kind of the key components for you in really looking at the scripts and developing this character and figuring out what is that going to look like, because it's an emotional state for her and it also is the physical state of how you're playing her.
I mean, I think that she's put herself in this box because she's afraid of herself. I think that was something that I talked about with to Rebecca about a lot of what is it like to embody a woman who is genuinely trying to keep herself in a box because she is so afraid if she missteps, she's going to be dangerous to other people, to her son, to her marriage, to the world. And what would that look like if she's trying to keep herself so tightly wound that, one false move and it all sort of falls apart, which you see in the show it does. And I think a lot of women can, I hopefully not, but maybe relate to in a way of they don't want to open themselves up to change because they're afraid of what unraveling might happen.
Yeah. And I think that's also why the very first time that she meets Margo, there's such a curiosity and an interest because it's immediately seeing somebody who isn't constraining herself in the ways that she's been doing consciously and subconsciously. And how do you feel like Margo really served as the central conduit for Sophie to go on that journey?
Oh, definitely. It's the antithesis. It's a mirror image of each other of two people who are both survivors in a way, but doing it so wrongly in both arenas. Like they neither one of them are okay human beings. Like let's just say that. And it's hard to root for either of them in this situation, but I think you're seeing two women that have made really bad choices over and over again, but see in each other a survival instinct that comes to a head and really faces each other because they're tired of running and for as this long, and they're tired of running away from their decisions that they've made. And so, yeah, this Margot is definitely the conduit to many of Sophie's bad choices, and I think will continue to do so, hopefully, if we get another season.
Absolutely. And it also feels like Margot's someone who is a conduit to that, but also who is someone whose approval Sophie really seeks. And we start to see her dressing a little bit differently, or even the conversation with her husband of like, maybe I'm going to shave my legs before going, and kind of
Yeah.
wanting to fit in a little bit more. And how did you feel like the external things, like the costumes, like the way that she's changing her look, really helped in that journey and arc for you?
Um, I think we did that also, and I tried to incorporate that, but I worked really closely with wardrobe and hair and makeup and with Rebecca as well, is that slowly, even down to like her spray tan, it gets a little bit more, um, not even like Margot, but just like a little bit more um I guess aware of her self as a woman or like what she wants to present. And I think that that was intentional. I think that a lot of women can relate to like after you've been married for a while, you don't necessarily shave your legs unless it's like a big outing. I mean, you should maybe. And I think that that's a big thing for Sophie is that I think she's a little bit more aware of herself as a woman and taking up space. Whereas when she was put in this box that was self-inflicted in a way, I think she wasn't wanting to take up any space. She wasn't wanting to be seen. And now Margot is definitely the epitome of being seen, and that is alluring to her.
Did you feel a physical difference starting to happen in how you were playing her as she started to take up more space with what you were just describing?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think the what I love about the trajectory of the show is that you really see at the end of the season, she kind of embodies a different type of woman. She's stepping into situations that are completely insane and dangerous, but she's doing it with this sort of like embodiment of power that she didn't have at the beginning. She's not asking for permission to step into a room anymore. And I do think that that's in part to Margot to like her detriment, I guess. And I think that that was really fun to play for me as an actor to go from a girl who's sort of wide-eyed and deer in headlights in a lot of ways to someone who is at the end, hopefully this is not a spoiler, but someone who is just reckless, just like taking all up all the space.
There's also so many red flags along the way that she, is someone who's intelligent enough to understand, but keeps ignoring. And I was
Yeah.
curious about, what you found as the reasoning for Sophie to constantly be avoiding or ignoring these red flags, because at the end of the day, there's a reason for it every time.
Oh, definitely. She was probably the most frustrating character I've ever played in terms of you have a son and you're doing what? But I kind of love that about her because it's so different than something that I would do and it was definitely the story driver in a way of all these bad decisions then sort of compile on each other to the end where you're just so frustrated with this character, but you're still wondering how she's going to get out of this mess, which is intentional. Um, and I think that that was definitely a challenge for me as an actor to rationalize these crazy decisions and try to come from it from a place of like, she needs to get this woman, she needs to figure this relationship out. And if she doesn't figure this relationship out, then she loses everything. So she's willing to take her family and her son and everything else on a back seat in order to figure out why she's being pulled in this direction.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, with everything with her husband as well, it feels like the cracks that we start to see fracture open have been there in their relationship for a long time. And they've both kind of found their own ways of coping with it, but trying to avoid confronting it. What was it like to then step into the scene in the sequence where they finally have a head to head and they have a conversation and everything finally comes to the surface?
Sure. I unfortunately, and I'm sure this was for many different reasons, but that scene with Graham, with Evan's character when we decide to divorce or decide to split up and I need more time was 3 pages longer than what's in the show. It was a really, really intense scene with lots of crying and fighting and they sort of truncated it, I think, because I mean, unfortunately, Graham isn't exactly like the spiciest guy. So I think everyone wanted me to get to Margo, but I think that you really see in that conversation that these are two people that have been putting a band-aid on something that was so broken so long ago. And I mean, I know myself included, and lots of people can relate to being in relationships like that, where you just have a kid or a job or things going on and you haven't had a conversation like that, you haven't checked in with each other being like, are you happy?
And she's obviously flawed and has made several mistakes. And there's also all these little kind of like micro comments and digs that he makes at her that we see as well. What was the impact that you feel like Sophie started to kind of really feel of, I've been listening to these things and accepting these digs because I feel like my mistakes have been so much bigger, but actually it's okay to take up the space of being frustrated and confronting that.
Oh, sure. I mean, that was actually very much pared down. We tried many different ways. And Evan is the nicest guy on the planet, and I love him dearly. So it was so hard for him to play this much of a jerk. But yeah, there was different levels to Graham because I think he was trying to keep her in this box, but I think there was a lot of guilt and shame that Sophie held from the accident, from the hysterectomy, from not being the idea of a woman that she thought she was going to be, or the woman that she wanted to be as a wife and as a mother. And so that shame and guilt that she carried around really kept her small in a way and susceptible and almost, I so sad to say, like seemingly deserving of those digs because she felt like she was deserving of those mean things. And so that was a hard thing to play, but I unfortunately know that scenario all too well from girlfriends of mine who have been in relationships like that, and it kind of becomes a personality in a way.
Yeah, and she also comes across as someone who's felt so alone and so isolated for such a period of time. And with what you were just bringing up about the storyline about her hysterectomy and having tried to have a kid and then having these complications and carrying a lot of guilt and feeling like, yeah, my husband can be empathetic, but he can never understand what it was like to go through that. And
Mhm.
when you read that in the script, did that feel like a really fundamental thing in terms of the details that helped you to fully build out and flesh out this character?
I mean, I think the great thing about Sophie is there's a well-rounded woman there of so many different relatable things that women go through, the ideal of being a woman and what that means in this society um, standard that is put upon us to be this age when you're a mother and you have to be married and you have to have this many kids and this job and do it all by 35. And I think when that structure begins breaking down, you start to reevaluate, like, am I okay without these things that society has put me in this box because of? And I think it's her wrestling with that idea of like, can I still be an acceptable woman if I don't want these things anymore? If I failed, for lack of a better word. And I think that she realizes that maybe she wants new things. And I think a lot of women are going through that a lot lately.
And the mistakes that she made with the car crash also feel like another thing that's really isolated her because she has such a fear of people getting to know the mistakes that she's made and those regrets that she has. And there's that scene where Callie kind of knows about it and forces it out in front of the group, where she quickly realizes, wait, this has been my biggest fear for people to discover this. And actually, I survived it. And in playing Sophie, how did you feel like that was a really fundamental moment for her to be like, my biggest fear actualized and I'm still okay at the end of the day?
Yes, I mean, I loved that scene. I love that scene. You know what's so funny about that scene with Malin afterwards? I thought I did so terribly. I mean, I always think I did terrible, but that scene was like so not on my radar as an important scene. And then when I watched it back, you know, like this, I was like, oh, it was actually such a much more powerful connection for the two of us. Um, and I think because we were such good friends by that point, and because of our characters and all the work that we had done, it was already embedded into that without us trying to make that connection a part of the scene. And I think that it was so freeing for Sophie to finally be herself and not put in a box. When she says something that's secretive and releasing that shame. I know for me, like with my mental health charity or with any of my story that I've ever come out with and shared publicly, it is such a breath of fresh air to finally realize that you're not alone in this thing that you've created in your mind, and you're so much more connected to people than you realized.
No, I love that point as well. And I was also curious about your perspective of Sophie's relationship with the rest of the group, because Margot's really the person that she centers in on and wants to get to know at the beginning. And obviously, they are a byproduct of being welcomed into that group. Did you feel like she kind of really wanted to connect with them? Or did you feel like it was just, I want this friendship and these people are also here and why not have fun and get to know them at the same time?
I think it was genuinely at first out of necessity and a anthropology at like a base level of like I need to fit in with these people. I don't have another choice. I don't have anyone. I feel already so isolated. My marriage isn't going well. I feel very much alone, and I think she was starving for connection and friendship in a way where, she wanted people to like her. And I feel like the more and more that you're around people and the more and more you realize that everybody has these insecurities and everyone's just trying to fit in a way, I think most people are wanting to fit in a group. And I think she maybe didn't cover it very well. She didn't cover it well at all. But I think that's what it was, is that just please anyone like me at this point.
Did you feel like there were certain elements of Sophie's experience kind of coming into a new space, into a new group, and all of these experiences, like when they take her out shooting and she's never even handled a gun before, that, you could kind of carry yourself through of like, well, I've never done these things either. So it's easy to connect in this moment.
I am not a hunter. I don't believe in it. I do not like it. Thank gosh. I mean, I want to make this very clear. Like there were no animals that in this at all. These were all CGI pigs, and we didn't even fire real ammunition. It's all CGI. But even holding a gun is very strange to me, and so I definitely used that to my advantage because I didn't have to feel comfortable. Um, yeah, and I think that was all part of the fun in a way, is that I didn't have to work very hard to feel very awkward in those situations. Yeah.
And when it comes to the infamous night at Margot's lake house where everything kind of spawns from, that's such an example of Sophie consciously knowing that she's making choices that aren't the right thing to do in that moment. And, whether it's with Margo, whether it's with turning a blind eye to Margo and Brad, or even just Jamie being there as well. And when you first read the scripts, did you have an immediate understanding of like how fundamentally that was going to be so pivotal to her entire story and all of the changes that then come in her?
I remember reading it and being like, "Oh my gosh, you stupid bitch." This is really bad. Um, and I get it. I mean, there's so many people who are very loud right now, and rightfully in a way, about that scene because it's very noisy. And I do have to preface this entire conversation with the fact that this is for entertainment purposes. they are not actually 18 years old, you know? Um, but I think in that moment, she's so, I think, it's hard to imagine this because she's like almost a 40-year-old woman, but I think we've all been in those situations where you're making a bad decision because you're just not weighing the pros and cons and thinking very clearly. And she's clearly not thinking clearly, and she doesn't know that that is the straw that broke the camel's back in so many ways. And it really sets her up for um, a lack of a better phrase, like, fuck it. The whole rest of the show is just complete chaos.
And you had the chance to film the scene that we see the security footage of where Sophie originally was talking to Abby. And I've heard you say that that scene was actually her trying to reason with her and still being protective of Margo. And how did, even the fact that we don't get to hear the dialogue in that scene, but how did filming that really help you to understand all of the choices that Sophie continues to make against her better judgment with Margo and, still trying to protect her even when she knows that she's been untruthful to her?
Definitely. I can understand why that scene isn't in there because it's sort of who cares what I'm saying, and it was all improv, but the idea behind that scene is that I'm, and maybe I shouldn't, I don't know if I should be saying this. Maybe Rebecca wants to save this for season 2, but it's already out there, I guess. But I am out there with Abby, because I'm drunk and because and Abby's upset and I'm trying to talk her off this ledge and I'm trying to reason with Abby because I don't really know this girl. And so I don't think I'm giving anything away to assume that I'm defending Margo in a way. She's not necessarily the scene that we filmed, she's not saying exactly what's going on, but I'm trying to like keep her from getting to Margo. And so, yeah, no matter what, even when I'm blackout drunk, Sophie is defending her lady.
And one of the moments that's so visceral between Sophie and Margot is when they finally are face to face at the motel and, she's confronting her with like, you lied and I feel like you completely set me up, and
Mhm.
gets physical, where you get into that physical altercation and Sophie comes out on top being the one to literally pin her by her neck up against the wall. What was that like, filming that scene and just really channeling all of the anger that Sophie's feeling in that moment?
That scene was crazy. I mean, thank gosh me and Malin are so close of friends because, I didn't want to hurt her, but we're really intense in that scene, and I came with a lot of stuff from, things that I was working through during that time. And I think it was really necessary for Sophie to finally stand up for herself, albeit she didn't last very long in terms of like standing up for herself. But that scene is really pivotal to and important to me to finally show that she's not a doormat and she's aware of what Margot's doing, but then she chooses to ignore it because she's in love.
Yeah. And you and Marlon obviously worked incredibly closely on a lot of the intimate scenes. And I know that you had an intimacy coordinator working on it. But also, what's amazing about this show is you had a female showrunner and then you also had female directors. How did that really create such a conducive environment to filming those scenes together?
Oh, that was one of the reasons that I felt okay to sign on to the show is that I knew that there was only female directors, um, some legendary, iconic, and necessary voices in terms of uh, making it feel authentic. None of the sex scenes were blocked or shot by anybody other than women and queer women. And I think that that's really important to note that there was no men deciding what we were doing with our bodies or telling us what the shot was going to be or how it was going to look. This was made by women who have done this before. And so I think that that made me feel a little bit more protected when I decided to sign on to it. And then it made us feel very protected when we were shooting it as well, that we were doing this for the ladies.
It also feels like any of the physical scenes between the two of them, there's also such an intent and purpose about building the emotional intimacy between these characters, which also sets up for how Sophie spirals when she feels completely betrayed. How did you figure out the different levels and the different spaces of what that was going to look like for Sophie once she's just lashing out in anger? Because there's moments like when she leaves the voicemail, or even just when she confronts Margot at the party towards the end of the season.
Sure. I mean, I also have to call out Lizzie Talbot, who was our intimacy coordinator, was a queen and just so, so instrumental in us feeling confident and okay. I mean, she was looking at every single frame to make sure that we would feel okay and not uh, seen in a gratuitous way. And so I just have to like make sure that she's represented because I think those scenes sort of set the groundwork for us to, as actors, also feel really connected to each other because we were going through a crazy experience together and then sort of made it heightened enough to where those scenes where we were fighting or all is lost even that much more heartbreaking because we wanted it to seem relatable and we wanted people to root for us. um, but I think that we didn't try that hard either, which is really nice. We were just sort of in it, and I think that you can hopefully see that in our work, I hope.
Yeah, no, it's really wonderful. And in talking about some of the moments at the end of the season and the version of Sophie that you end up finding towards the end, it's this kind of messy version that's connected to the previous version of herself that we learn was also incredibly flawed, just in different ways to the present. And how did you think about who she is when we first meet her at the beginning of the season and who she was in her past to find that version that's somewhere kind of in the middle of the two by the end?
I love that flashback episode. It's so silly because it's like, of course, in 2007 you have pink hair and you're listening to Katy Perry, which I was. Not pink hair, but I did have like a emo phase. Let's not go there. But I do like the fact that she meets Graham in a time when she is really scared of herself and she's scared of going down a path that she didn't foresee. And so that's sort of indicative of who she becomes later as well, of can I go down this path that I'm forging for myself, or do I have to keep myself safe? And Graham is the actual like symbol and epitome of someone who is safe that she makes a conscious decision to turn towards instead of going down a path that's very scary. And so I think that decision, when you see them outside on the steps, kind of lays the groundwork for their entire marriage, where she just chose a different way that she wasn't ready for.
I also, in talking completely about spoilers at the end of the season, wanted to talk about the sequence of scenes at the end with Margot's brother, with her in the car, and even just the blocking of that scene where it's like she reverses twice. She tries to extricate herself from the
Thank
situation.
you.
And
I did. She tried to get away.
but I was interested in how the blocking of that came together because I feel like that makes such an interesting choice for the character of I tried one thing and now I'm reverting to this.
Thank you for noticing that. What's also not in the show, which I was kind of sad, but I also get, is there was an entire scene that was cut out of me and Kyle when I go into, I mean, everybody sort of now is talking about the scene when he opens the door. But when he opens the door and I come in and I'm shocked because he's smoking crack. All sounds like out of context. Like, what the hell is this show? But we have an entire scene, just the two of us, where we're bantering, and I actually get to like him, and we're actually sort of we're not flirting, but we sort of like see something in each other that we respect and like. And so then when I say I'm going to go take him to his buddy's house, there's already like a trust there. They cut it out for timing, I'm sure. But that is why the scene where I, spoiler alert, do reverse and reverse. I don't want to hurt him. I actually like him, and I think that that's what is sort of missing from cutting that scene, is that we have like a good banter. I just am so scared that he's going to take everything away that I've worked so hard to secretly keep. I also think, people are missing the fact that I think he's pulling out a gun at that point. He goes into his pocket, and so he's pulling something out. I think he's going to shoot me. So I instinctively run him over. But I'm not excusing her behavior, by the way. It is crazy.
I think it's such a great point to kind of have the season lead towards with all of these moments because it sets so much up for a potential second season. So really enjoyed you sharing all of this. Thank you so much, Brittany. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thanks for listening to me rant about this all thing.